Hello all my crafty friends out there. If you have not been to my channel before, my name is Stephanie and I generally upcycle thrifted items, clothes into new clothes, maybe some quilts into clothes. Done a few different things, and today is a little different. I got a late notice that I needed to make somebody a strawberry. So one of my grandchildren, who's going to be in a kindergarten show, needs to be a strawberry for Thursday. Today's Sunday. Yeah, do the math on that one. Anyway, I went ahead and I bought some red and white polka dot fabric. Now, I haven't washed it, so it still has its sizing in it. It's still stiff. And I think I may leave it that way. I may not wash it, just for the fact that we want this to be poofy anyway, so that'll give us a little extra. Otherwise I might have to starch it, and I don't even want to go there. So we have red and white fabric to make our little strawberry body. We have some plain white cotton that I'm going to use to line it. And yes, I'm going to line it because inside I want to put some stuffing. So lining it will make it easier for me to stuff, and it'll also give it a little nice poof at the bottom. I'm going to put elastic at the top and the bottom so it'll be easy to get on and off. And then we're going to make a little leaf collar, kind of like the little clown collars, but this one will have leaves on it for our strawberry top. And I also bought some tulle. Some 2 different color green tulle, and the reason I bought this is I figured we're going to need something for the head. So I bought some headbands. Now she has super curly hair just like me, and so I think a headband with a little fascinator looking do will work well for her. So that is our project. If you like this kind of fun, subscribe, like, watch, see what we do, comment, let me know what you think, and let's get to going. All right, everybody, again, we are here to do a strawberry for a 6-year-old. And the best thing that I thought I could do, and the easiest thing I thought I could do, was to start out with a rectangle. So what I did is I measured how much distance there was from the back of her knee over her shoulder to the front at her knee. So in other words, I'm measuring what it would take fabric-wise to cover her from one side to the other, knee to knee, front and back. And it came up to be about I think it was 43 inches. So I added a few inches to that. So 43 divided in half is 21.5. And I added 3 inches to that, a little more than 3 inches actually, front and back, to make sure that I had enough of the outside or the strawberry to do the poofiness. You know, we wanted to give it a nice full look. So I did 26-inch by 22-inch squares, which is the width of the fabric, really. So because she was at the most round part of her little body, she was about, I think it was 24 inches. If she might not have been that much. So I figured 22 times 2 is more than enough to go around her, obviously. And again, give me plenty of space to stuff it. For the collar, I had an old clown pattern that I've used in the past, and I just kind of took a variation of the length and width of that collar. The collar was about 8 to 9 inches wide, and it was doubled over to be about, it ended up being 45 inches wide or long. A little bit more actually, but I didn't want to cut the fabric with the salvage, so I'm just using the width of the fabric, which is about 45 inches, and the 16.5 inch, which I'll fold in half to make the collar. I figured it'd be easier to fold it in half and make the scalloped edge for the leaves and then run elastic through the top. That's my idea. We'll see how it goes. And again, this is a rough draft. And I'm also, this part here on each side, I'm going to go down 4 inches, which is about her shoulder seam. I'm going to leave 6.5 inches open, will be her armhole, and then I'm going to finish it down. Now that looks weird because the shoulder should be up here on top. But if I gather all of this fabric to be her neckline, then this will end up coming up to be her shoulder seam. I know, clear as mud, but I think it's going to work out. So I went ahead and pre-cut my fabric, and this is my 16.5 inch by 45 inch, and I already cut them. I cut it in half. So this length here is my 16.5 inch, and I cut it in half because I figured if I'm going to do a scalloped edge or to make the leaves, that I would want to be able to turn them inside out to give them a crisp look, and I don't want to have to turn it inside out like a pillow. That'll be a mess. So I think this will work fine. That'll leave this top open for me to do that, but I can still come back and fold it over and make the elastic casing. So that won't be a problem. And then I have 2 pieces, the red and the white, that are the same size. They're the 26 by 22, and I've cut them in half as well. So we will be able to put our seams on either side to make our little armholes and our shoulders. So again, 4 inches for shoulder, 6.5 inch for armhole, and the rest of that will be seamed down. And we'll make it kind of like a bag, a tote, where we'll sew it all together, and then we'll probably sew the top and the 2 tops together, and then we'll turn it inside out. Okay, before we go sew, of course, we're going to need to mark our seams. So for both the white and the red, the white is the same on both sides, but I've turned these right sides together, and I'm going to use my grid here, and you can see if I count down 4 inches, I've got a blue mark there, and then I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5, and put my half mark here, and that's my armhole. And I'm doing that to both sides of the fabric, and I've already done it to the white, but it's the same concept. I'm just using my grid, and I'm marking the 4 and the 6.5. And I'm going to go over to the machine, and I'm going to use my foot pedal as my, not my foot pedal, my foot as my measuring guide, and it's going to end up being about, not quite a 1/2 inch, somewhere between 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch, and I'm just doing that to make life easier. You can do whatever seam allowance you want. I would put this on the serger, but right now I'm waiting for a light bulb from a serger, and it would be hard to do the start and stop on the serger anyway. So I'm going to go over to the sewing machine, 4 inches, and then the rest of this, leaving the armhole open, and we'll see you back here. And like I said, I'll do some red thread so you can see exactly what it looks like on this white. Okay, I have sewn the shoulder seam, or what's going to be the shoulder seam, and the bottom of the strawberry, and this is the lining. It's easier to see that red seam and the little armhole that's here. So this is open. I did that with the red as well. So now what we need to do is we need to put them together, at least to get the top seam around the neck sewn together so it'll be nice and flush. And the bottom we'll probably have to do a little, we'll probably have to sew it, we'll have to iron it and then sew it together at the bottom to make the casing for the elastic at the bottom. I really don't know that I'm going to do the extra piece. I just don't know if that would work or not. I don't want it to be inhibiting for her little legs to move. So anyway, I mean, it's going to come in some, but not as much as that. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to turn these right sides together. So I'm actually going to leave this one like this. And I'm going to turn this one out. So what we'll see is this is the outside of our strawberry. And you can see again, here's our armholes. And I'm going to put the lining, I'm going to put it inside the lining. And again, it's going to be right sides to right sides because this is our seam. We're going to match our seams. Make sure our armholes are in the same position. So we're going to match our seams. Now I'm just folding. You can press your seams open, but I really don't think it's necessary in this particular little situation. But as long as you've got where you're matching up your seams on the sides, right here, and you know your armholes match up because they're right there too. So they match up. And all we're going to do, once we get these two seams together, is we're going to sew around the top. Now, when we sew around the top, we're going to leave an opening. We're going to leave about, I would say about a, I don't know, 2-inch opening here. I'm just going to put a pin on each side, like this. That might be more than 2 inches. So that'll mark my opening, and I'm going to leave that so that I'll have some place to insert my elastic at the top. Now, obviously, I don't need something that wide, but I'm going to insert the elastic from the top and then sew a casing around it from, I actually might just sew it, go ahead and, well, I'll have to turn it inside out before I sew the casing. So top seam all the way around, leaving an opening to put in our elastic. And that's going to be putting our first pieces together somewhat. And again, this is the top of the strawberry. This is the part that's going to be gathered in around her neck. That didn't look right, but you know what I mean. All right, I've sewn all the way around the top, which is going to be the neckline. Right sides together, and I left a little opening here that I'm going to use to insert my elastic. Now, this is the interesting part. We're going to turn it inside out, or right side out, I should say, like this. And we're going to stuff the lining back into the strawberry, the little body, if I can get it open. It's easier to pull it down from here. Just come in here, yank that lining back in, and we may do a little pressing of this collar line just so we get a nice crisp line to make our casing with. So this is the beginning of our strawberry, and see our lining and our armholes line up, which is what we want to do. There's our two armholes. And we're going to use bias tape to wrap around those to close those up and push them and put them together. I'm going to take the iron and I'm going to press this down. And then once I press it down, I'm going to sew about a 1/2 inch all the way around. Maybe not quite a 1/2 inch. Yeah, a 1/2 inch should be good. And that way I can put my handy dandy 1/4 inch elastic through the top here to make the little scrunchy collar. That's all going to come together like this. Does that make sense? Clear as mud, right? All right, we've got it all pressed, and so we're going to make the casing at the top. Here's our little opening still, right there. So we're going to make the casing at the top. We only need, I'm going to use this 1/4 inch elastic. So a 1/2 inch is more than enough. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do I'll do maybe 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to sew 3/4 of an inch all the way around the top. That will create our casing that I can put the elastic in and make the little collar scrunch up. But I'm not going to put the elastic in until the end because we're going to have to do these armholes, and I don't want to make them complicated by having a scrunchy collar. And also we're going to have to figure out how to hem this and put elastic in it as well. Okay, let's work on these armholes for a minute. I was going to use bias tape to go around the edges to seal in both of the raw edges. And then I figured out that maybe if I just folded it with the natural seam that I already have on both sides, folded it in, and I'm just going to sew around the edge of this armhole, I think it'll be a lot cleaner. The bias tape, although wonderful for turning curves, is not great for this each of these sharp corners. So I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to sew around these armholes, and I've already pinned them where you can see the natural seam is turned in, so I will be able to go around those and catch all the raw edges. Don't know exactly how I want to say that, but you know what I mean. It's easier to see it on the white side, but essentially I just sewed around that armhole, kind of like a buttonhole, made it like a big buttonhole. So that will encase our armholes. And we've got our top casing for our elastic up here. But before we put that together, let's figure out the bottom. And again, I'm thinking I'm going to need to turn in a little bit of a hem here on both pieces of fabric and meet them like that. Sew them around, leaving a hole, and then sew the other part of the bottom of the casing and run elastic in the top and bottom. I think that will be our body for our strawberry. But first, let me get the iron out, and I'm going to iron both of these pieces, these ends, all the way around, probably about, you know, not quite a 1/2 inch, maybe a 1/4 inch. It's really up to you what you want to use as a seam allowance. As long as you're consistent and you use the same seam allowance for that throughout your project, you should be fine. This is not necessarily going to be a problem one way or the other because it's just a tube. Alright, I've got them both ironed in about a 1/2 inch on each side, the lining and the strawberry outside. So I'm just going to kind of line up my seam allowances, because that's the seams, that's really all I've got that matches up, and that's fine. I'm going to line those up, pin those, and my tool's going to run across the table. And I'm also going to try to pin myself a little opening so I know for sure I don't keep running over it, and have an opening so I can put my elastic in. So like last time, I'll make a little opening over here and just leave a couple of pins on the side here so I know not to go past it. And then we'll do just like the top. We'll run a seam, well, in this particular case, we'll run a stitch very close to this edge, and then we'll run one about 3/4 to a 1/2 inch in, so we can put our 1/4 inch elastic in that casing. But we'll leave the opening in the top up there on the outside. I wasn't sure if a lot of y'all like to watch me sew or not, but what we're doing here is that little top seam around to catch both these sides. And I'm going to start over here where my little pins are put together to make my hole for my elastic. And because I think, well, let's make sure we got it pulled nice and tight between the seam and there. So let's start there. And we're going to, again, I'm gonna go as close to this edge as I can. So I'm gonna adjust my needle over here to the edge. And I'm just gonna run it along that top. I'll take my little pin out. I think we're going to be okay without stuffing it. Now, if I get it on her and I figure out that she needs more poof, then what I'll do is I'll open up one of the seams on the inside and stuff it with some stuffing. But I don't think we're going to need to because there's going to be so much gathered with the elastic. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put elastic in the collar. And, you know, I'm going to do it right off the spool. And I am going to use my good old trusty handy dandy tool, the safety pin. And I'm just folding the elastic over, sticking my safety pin through it to anchor it. I'll find my little hole that I left up top somewhere. Where is it? I know I left an opening. Well, where is it? I should have marked it. That would make it easier to find. Ah, there it is. Okay. We'll put our elastic through. And we're going to start gathering this up for the collar. This could take a while, so I'm going to fast forward through it. I have done the collar in a preliminary way. I've left this down here at the end so I can try it on her to make sure this will fit over her little head, but I'm pretty sure it will. It's pretty big. But you can see how poofy it's making the rest of this, so I don't think we're going to need any stuffing. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run the elastic on the bottom. Same concept, not as tight obviously, but that will give us that round look of the strawberry. So I'm going to run some elastic in this, and then again I'm going to leave it open until I try it on her and make sure that it's tight enough and not too tight at the same time for the top and the bottom. And the next thing you and I are going to work on, I'm not going to put you through elastic at the bottom, but the next thing we're going to work on is the little collar. All right, for the neck, for the collar that goes around the neck that I want to make look like leaves, I have two 45-inch length pieces of fabric. And they're about 8 1/4 inches wide at the short end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew them both into tubes first. So I'm going to sew the seams on the ends first. And then I'm going to insert them into each other. And that will give me the ability to do the leaf pattern. And then I can clip all that. I'm going to have to clip it really tight to get it to turn properly. And I'm going to turn it inside out. Okay, I've made tubes out of them. So there's, here, I'll show you. There's 2 tubes. All right. And these are the seams, and I'm putting right sides together and putting the tubes inside of each other. Kind of like, I don't know, there's a lot of different things you could do with this, but So the tubes are inside of each other, right sides together. I'm going to line up the raw edges as best we can so we can get a good cut on this. You can see I've been trying to figure out exactly how I wanted to cut this. So I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to fold it in half again. Okay? And I want a leaf shape here. So I'm going to kind of rough draft a leaf shape. And I'm not going all the way to the top because I'm going to have room for my casing. Now this is a lot of fabric. I don't think my rotary cutter is going to hack it. So we get to use these. Gosh, I hope this holds up. I'm going to pin it in a couple of spots. Let me get some pins. I've moved all of my pins over to my sewing machine. And so, whoop. That's what happens when you keep pinning and sewing and pinning and sewing. You forget to bring them back to the other side. So we're going to try and pin these in some spots to hold them together because it's a lot of layers of fabric. I'm even going to pin the part that I'm cutting off. And we're going to cross our fingers and see what happens. It's kind of like cutting a snowflake. Never been really good at that either. Woo! So. All right. Fingers crossed. Let's see what this does. All right. It gave us the leaves we needed. So, there's our leaves. And it's okay that it didn't cut it off perfect on the end down there. That's okay. I'm just gonna, I'll shape that one up kind of manually. I'm gonna kind of try and keep them together. I'll shape this one up a little bit. Just a little. Like that. Just a little shaping. Give it a little more of a point. Alright, now I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew all these angles and then we're going to turn it inside out to have our collar. This is kind of what it looks like. It's 4 points. Can you see that? And I kept them together because they are cut together so they should fit together. And I'm going to go around the edges of the corners here and make the leaves. And let's see how it turns out. It's just going to be kind of slow going. Let me readjust the camera so you can see more of the machine. And there we are. There's the machine. Alright, let's see if we can do this. I'm just going to start on an edge. Doesn't really matter to me which one, because we're going to use the top to turn it, so I don't have to worry about closing, leaving an opening or anything like that. Let's see. I'm not back stitching. Because I'm going to meet the circle, essentially, meet the end of that seam when I get to the end of it. So let me do this and we'll get back when I'm turning it inside out. Alright, I've got the leaves sewn together. I just stitched around. Maybe it's easier to lay it out like this. I just stitched around the edges and then I clipped the corners off, and I clipped to the stitching in the corners to help us turn it. There's not a lot of curve to the inside, so I think I might be able to press that open or press it down and get a nice crease out of it. So we're going to turn our leaves out and push our little corners out. Like I said, these are kind of big and gradual. They're not super tight. There's our seamed one. And there we go. Now let's press this down, and then when we make a collar out of it, hopefully the little leaves will stand out right. There's only 4 of them, so I probably could have done that differently and made more of them, but we'll see. Like I said, I'm gonna go press these just to make sure they're nice and crisp, and then I may put a little seam down the center of them to keep them in place. A little decorative seam from my sewing machine. I've got one that kind of looks like the center of a leaf. So let me get the iron out and get these pressed. Alright, I've put the little decorative lines down the leaves to kind of give them the stem look. And I've decided I'm going to use this bias tape anyway. I know it's red, but it's going on the strawberry, so it's not going to matter. Looks a little Christmassy, but you never know what you're going to be able to use this for. So I'm going to do the casing with this bias tape, and it's the same way I've done casing before. I'm going to run this raw edge to raw edge right beside each other, and then I'm going to run a seam right in that fold. Right in that fold is where I'm going to run the seam. And that way, when I'm done, I can turn over the bias tape into the inside of the collar, and that will create my pocket for, or casing for, my elastic. So, again, opening up one side of the bias tape, single fold, put it up against the raw edge of our collar, sew down that seam, and flip it over. So let me go get this sewn on, and then we'll work on running the elastic through this, and hopefully we'll be almost there, short of having to try it on. All right, I sewed on the bias tape. Again, I sewed it to the front side in that crease, and then I turned it over to make the casing. So this is our back side. Although it's green on green, it doesn't matter. And I left this little opening here to put our elastic through. So again, I'm going to run the elastic right off the spool to kind of gauge how big I want the neckline. And let me get me a pin and just pin my elastic, and I'm going to run this through, and we're going to get back together when I've got it all run and when I'm sizing it up to go on the top of the strawberry, and make sure that 4 leaves is enough. Otherwise, y'all won't see this because I'll be filming it over. Okay, everybody. Here's our strawberry. Looks kind of big right now, but it'll be cute on her. I'll show y'all pictures of it when I get it all put together on her and all the elastics adjusted. Because see, I've still got elastic hanging out here just to make sure I adjust it where it won't be it'll be comfortable for her. And I'm also going to show y'all pictures of the fascinator. Essentially, I'm just going to be tying tulle onto this headband to make it cute and fuzzy. So, hope y'all have enjoyed this. If you like this kind of content, subscribe, like, comment, let me know what you think. If you have any questions about this, let me know. And it's not always clear as mud when we're doing the video. I know that people have questions, not sure which seam allowance I did, you know, all kinds of things. So hope y'all enjoyed it. I will show y'all, I'll tack on pictures of my granddaughter in it. And I'll catch y'all on the flip side of our next project.